What if some of the diabetes advice you've followed for years wasn't quite right, and nobody ever told you? Maybe you've cut out fruit entirely. Maybe you've avoided bread like it's dangerous. Maybe you've spent years believing that a single slice of cake could undo everything you've worked for. These beliefs feel true because they've been repeated so often, passed from friend to friend, headline to headline. But some of them aren't backed by the evidence at all. And by the end of this video, you may look at your own kitchen a little differently. If you've ever felt confused or even a little guilty about food choices because of something you heard once and never questioned, I want you to know that's an incredibly common experience. Diabetes information has been passed around for decades, and along the way, some of it got twisted, oversimplified, or simply left behind by newer research. This matters especially after 60, because so many of these beliefs were formed years ago and never updated. Today, we're going to gently separate fact from fiction, not to overwhelm you with new rules, but to free you from ones that were never true to begin with. Let's start with where so many of these myths actually come from. Think about Diane, a 74-year-old grandmother who hasn't eaten a banana in over a decade. Someone once told her fruit was basically sugar, and that belief stuck so firmly that she still politely declines it at family gatherings, even though she misses it. She never questioned where that advice came from. It just became part of how she saw her own health. Stories like Diane's are everywhere, and they reveal something important. Many diabetes beliefs aren't rooted in evidence at all. They're rooted in fear, secondhand advice, or outdated guidelines from decades ago that were never revisited. Once a belief takes hold, it tends to feel true simply because it's familiar, not because it's accurate. This is the hidden problem. Myths don't spread because people are careless. They spread because they sound reasonable, they come from people we trust, and unlearning them can feel riskier than just continuing to avoid the forbidden food. But holding on to outdated beliefs can unnecessarily limit your choices and your enjoyment of food, without actually protecting your health any further. Let's clear up the science behind a few of these ideas using simple terms. Here's an important starting point. Not all carbohydrates behave the same way in your body. Think of carbohydrates as falling somewhere on a spectrum. On one end, you have refined carbohydrates, white bread, sugary cereal, soda, which break down quickly and are associated with faster spikes in blood sugar. On the other end, you have carbohydrates that come bundled with fiber like whole fruit, beans, and whole grains. That fiber acts like a built-in brake, slowing down how quickly sugar enters your bloodstream. This is exactly why whole fruit isn't the same as fruit juice, even though both come from the same source. An apple's fiber and water content slow digestion, while apple juice, stripped of that fiber, allows sugar to be absorbed much faster. So when someone says fruit is basically sugar, they're missing half of the story, the fiber that comes along with it. The same nuance applies to sweets. A small dessert eaten occasionally, alongside a balanced meal, behaves very differently in your body than a habit of daily sugary snacking on an empty stomach. Context, portion, and pairing matter just as much as the food itself. Now let's talk about where these misunderstandings tend to cause the most harm. The first mistake is treating all carbohydrates as equally dangerous. This often leads to cutting out nutrient-rich foods like fruits, beans, and whole grains, foods that are actually associated with better long-term health outcomes when eaten in reasonable portions. But here's what most people don't realize. The second mistake is believing that diabetes is entirely caused by eating too much sugar. In reality, type 2 diabetes develops through a combination of factors, including genetics, activity levels, and how the body responds to insulin over time. Sugar intake is one piece of a much larger picture, not the sole cause. And that's only part of the story. The third mistake is believing that a diabetes diagnosis means giving up all favorite foods forever. This all-or-nothing thinking often leads to frustration, and ironically, can make it harder to stick with healthy habits long-term, because complete restriction rarely feels sustainable. Finally, some seniors believe that if they feel fine, their blood sugar must be fine too. But since blood sugar changes often happen without obvious symptoms, feeling well isn't the same as having confirmation from an actual blood sugar reading. So how do we replace these myths with something more useful? Rethink fruit. Whole fruit, eaten in reasonable portions, comes packaged with fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants. Pairing it with a source of protein like a handful of nuts, can further support steadier digestion. Reframe carbohydrates. Instead of avoiding them entirely, focus on choosing whole, fiber-rich versions, brown rice over white rice, whole grain bread over white bread, and pay attention to portion sizes. Allow room for treats. A small dessert, enjoyed occasionally and mindfully, can fit into a balanced approach. The goal is consistency over time, not perfection in every single meal. Move regularly. Physical activity is associated with improved insulin sensitivity, meaning your body may use available insulin more effectively. Prioritize sleep and stress management. Both are linked to blood sugar regulation, and improving them can support your efforts just as much as food choices do. Stay consistent with monitoring. Regular check-ins with your healthcare provider, including blood sugar testing when recommended, give you real information instead of relying on how you feel. Ask questions. If you're ever told a food is off limits, it's completely reasonable to ask why, and to bring that question directly to your doctor or a registered dietitian who can explain the reasoning behind the recommendation. Letting go of an old belief can feel strange, even a little vulnerable, especially if you've followed it faithfully for years. But updating what you know isn't a sign that you were doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're willing to keep learning, and that's something to be genuinely proud of. You don't have to overhaul everything you believe overnight. Start with just one myth from today's video and challenge it gently. Maybe that means adding a small piece of fruit back into your week, or simply asking your doctor a question you've been holding on to for years. Progress rarely happens all at once. It happens one honest, curious step at a time. If this video helped clear up something you've wondered about for a while, I'd love for you to give it a like. It truly helps this channel reach more people looking for accurate, compassionate health information. Subscribe if you'd like to keep learning alongside me, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new topic. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Was there a myth here that surprised you? Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.